speaker is Peggy Schaeffer, who is Communications Coordinator for the Dryad repository.
Hi, and when I get this going, let me just ask you, those of you who are tweeting, to please tweet at us and follow us if you like. We're datadryad.org, not Dryad, because that's somebody else. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about Dryad and how we got where we are with our sustainability planning. So let me start by giving you a little background about the repository. Dryad builds on the traditional scientific publishing model by augmenting the journal article with links to the data. It's designed for data that doesn't already have a discipline-specific home, such as GenBank. Our original focus was on evolutionary biology and ecology, but we now embrace all of the life sciences and biosciences very broadly, including medicine, epidemiology, paleontology, etc. And we also now accept non-data materials, about which more later. But the important point that I want to mention here is that all the deposits in Dryad are associated with the publication. So for researchers, we offer services and assets to all the major players in the scientific research cycle. For authors and researchers, we enable citable data and access to data that verifies published results and is available to refine methodologies and repurpose. For journals and publishers, we enable them to increase the discoverability and impact of their articles and to add value to the communities they serve without hosting supplementary online materials. For libraries and institutions, we make data widely available and indexed. We could complement institutional repositories, and we're also a tool that you could suggest when you're advising about research data management. For funders, Dryad preserves and makes universally available the data, which is the output of all that research funding. It's also important for me to say that Dryad is open source, it's built on DSpace, and all the deposits in the repository are freely available under a CC0 waiver. Dryad's an organization too, and a community-led one. The Dryad Consortium is composed of representatives of our partner journals and other institutions, and I'll say more about that later. But here's the requisite timeline to show you where we began. Dryad is incubated at the National Evolutionary Synthesis Center in Durham, North Carolina, and we're affiliated in partnership with Duke University, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and the NC State University in Raleigh. We're funded by NSF from 2008 to 2012, and again 2012 to 2016. We're very happy about that. But I want to say that sustainability planning has been integral and on our agenda since before Dryad's inception. I recently found the notes from the first original workshop in 2007, and the first topic on the first day was sustainability. So what does Dryad do? Well, Dryad integrates article and data submission. And if you can't see this workflow diagram, I've scattered some brochures around, and they have the same workflow diagram in it. So we felt that the time and effort required to prepare and submit data to a repository is a major barrier to data archiving. And Dryad addresses this problem in part by integrating into the manuscript processing workflow of its partner journals. Automated email messages containing bibliographic metadata, such as author names, abstracts, and keywords, are passed between the journal's manuscript processing system and Dryad, so that in the end, the repository links to the article, the journal links to the data, and minimal effort is required of the author or the editor. We offer optional customizations, such as submission of data prior to manuscript review or upon acceptance. And when it's in the review cycle, it's of course available securely and anonymously to the reviewers. Currently, we have over 20 integrated partner journals who have integrated their manuscript processing systems with ours. And we work closely with them to customize this to meet their needs. We see ourselves as a service to journals. So we have to listen when they ask for something. But the result is, we think, a good one, where those journals that are handling our data from the moment of article acceptance are in the end going to publish those articles with a link to Dryad. And these journal partners are also members of our Dryad consortium. So here's what Dryad looks like, or looked like yesterday. For those of you who can't see it, we've got 1,400 data packages. A data package is, we define a data package as all the data relative to a certain article. It can be multiple files. And we've got 3,600 data files from 117 journals. We're currently receiving about 100 submissions a month, and the rate of submission continues to grow steadily. About 1/4 of our submissions are volunteered from authors who are publishing in non-partner journals, which explains why we have data from over 5 times as many journals as there are integrated partners. And here's a look at the landing page for a data package, one of our most highly cited data packages. And again, I don't know if you can see that. This page, this description has been viewed, or yesterday, 1,221 times, whereas the data file, which is the global wood density database, has been downloaded 2,500 times. But this is unusual. For data packages that have been deposited in 2012, the median number of downloads for the most popular file in each data package is 12. Some of this download activity is known to be from the use of data in the classroom, and that's what we think is going on here too. Those of you with eagle eyes will perhaps notice that the author list is different from the data than from the article, as the article citation at the top and then the data underneath it. This was the author's, at the author's direction. In fact, our curator tried to correct it and was told, no, there are different authors and a different order for the data package. So I want to point that out because it does illustrate that an independent data citation can provide an incentive for members of a collaborative who want to get credit for their contributions. Here are some of our basic principles and priorities. These have been set through a consensus process, and some of you may know our Dryad leadership, Todd Vision and Jane Greenberg at University of North Carolina. Working with our board, which consists of representatives of our partner journals, and working toward these goals and benefits. I want to say that internationalization is an ongoing effort. We have members from the UK, US, Canada, and Bulgaria. And we've had 3 board meetings so far in 3 different countries. We are continuing to study the impact of data citation. Some of you might be familiar with the article by Heather Pivovar in 2007, sharing detailed research data is associated with increased citation rate. That was a good one for us. And we continue to work toward standards for data citation. As for the last point here, we tried to understand the true costs of hosting supplementary data on journal websites. We found it very difficult. In most cases, journals and publishers don't know. They don't really manage this function directly, and therefore they don't really know the cost. So it's hard for us to say how this compares to the cost of current practice. For a data repository, of course, it's critical to ensure that adequate funds exist to preserve the data in perpetuity that aren't dependent on grant funding. So early on, we recognized that some combination of archiving charges, society and institutional subscriptions, and other sources would be needed to ensure that the repository is not dependent on ephemeral grant funding. And one of the major tasks of our consortium board is to reach an agreement on a sustainability plan and help to implement it. Our stakeholders are diverse, as you see here, and we work toward the view that there are large flows of money in publishing, but diminishing flows in libraries. So we've focused on the very small marginal cost of data archiving when it's viewed as part of the publication cycle, and asserting that investment in data archiving is money well spent. An analysis that we did that was published in Nature showed that compared to the average numbers of research papers that result from $400,000 in grant funding, which is 16 papers over 4 years, a similar investment in a data repository can be expected to yield over 1,000 papers in 4 years. The money for scholarly communication in open access typically flows through the funder to institutions and researchers to publishers, which then covers the cost of publication. So the primary revenue in our model taps into that flow, primarily at the publisher end. Here are some of our early assumptions, and I'll say more about curation coming up. And early thoughts and brainstorming about potential sources for revenue yielded this kind of a list, although I have to say that paper use is very quickly rejected, never seriously considered. So we retained 2 consultants with the goal of preparing a basis for our sustainability plan presented to the board at our second meeting in London in December 2009. Lori Richards is a PhD student at the UNC School of Information and Library Science, and Neil Beagrie is a London-based consultant who specializes in working with digital archives and collections. And there's more detail about this available in the paper that they presented in 2010. So their cost model, some of the components of their cost model are shown here, and it found that curation costs are the largest driver. And of course, curation costs vary according to the level of additional work, metadata enhancement, and the packaging and documentation for reuse that we might be undertaking at Dryad. So as a result of this, we developed a series of curation service levels, and we have their associated costs. These curation levels were set very deliberately on the part of the board with knowledge of the costs and benefits involved. I have to say that Dryad's level of data curation is moderate because we have the great advantage that all of our data is associated with the publication, and the metadata for the article is used as the basis for the metadata for the data. So here is a quick look at our curation service levels. These times, of course, are average. We're not using this to charge depositors by the minute, but to understand how curation level drives cost. And this is an intentionally lightweight approach that enables higher volume as we scale up, we believe. Our metadata doesn't dig deeply into the content of the files. But this is a flexible approach that suits all sorts of files, since Dryad is multidisciplinary and our data files are very heterogeneous. Currently, what we are doing mostly now is level 1 with selected steps from level 2. And I should also mention that our senior curator also serves as the help desk for our editors and authors, and this is a very important role. So this cost model allowed us to make some predictions, and here the cost drivers are volume and curation level. And as you can see, curation levels 1 and 2 are at nearly the same cost, and the result of that is a realization that for our repository management planning, the vast majority of our files do not warrant or require level 3 curation. And also, as you see, economies of scale are reached at 5,000 to 10,000 articles per year, at which costs are $40 per article approximately. Our current volume, as I said, is about 25 to 30 new data submissions a week. So we have the idea that we will be sustainable with 50 to 100 integrated journals, but of course that depends on many factors, such as the degree of journal support for data archiving, which affects the volume of submissions for a certain journal, the percentage of data-rich papers in a journal, and just the mere total volume of the journal. We're at about 20% of the way toward this goal now, and we have a few years to reach it. We're committed to expanding the repository in order to reach the sustainability levels that are anticipated here by bringing in new partners as journals and publishers either offer or require data archiving in Dryad. We're actively expanding, embracing biomedical data recently, accepting dissertation data, and enabling the deposit of non-data materials such as software that doesn't have another better home. We're also expanding our connections to publishers who understand the issues around research data and either wish to offer data Dryad as an option or require data availability as a condition of publication. Although authors can voluntarily submit data to Dryad, the most effective way for us to add volume is to collaborate with journals and publishers who support data archiving and who seek a sustainable solution for research data. So this growing Dryad is an ongoing effort. We had a one-year grant funded by JISC in the UK, based at the British Library, which allowed us to build connections with several important publishers in Europe, since so many STM publishers are based there. And we're currently working with several high-volume journals and publishing platforms. PLOS Biology will be the first PLOS journal next week. And soon to be followed, we hope, by the others, including PLOS One, with a volume of over 13,000 articles a year. We're also implementing integration with BMJ and Biomed Central and talking to F1000 Research and eLife who are two new open access data-centric journals that are based in the UK. F1000 Research, I don't know if you're familiar with it, will publish articles in biology and medicine and link to their data immediately after a sanity check, and then they'll be ready for open peer review and reader comment. eLife is supported by funders who are motivated to see data openly available in a public archive. So both of those are very interesting precedents. We're expanding the Dryad Consortium and invite membership involvement from many interested parties. We certainly welcome more participants if your organization is interested. So let me tell you a little bit about the Dryad Consortium. This is our organization, soon to be a 501c3 nonprofit, and an expanding community, international community of journals and other partners who are actively supporting data archiving. It's a consortium with heterogeneous membership composed of representatives from journals and publishers, as well as other organizations. Funding agencies, professional societies, research institutes, and universities, for example, can all be members of the Dryad Consortium and offer streamlined and discounted data archiving services to their affiliates through Dryad. The full membership elects the board of directors, votes on changes to bylaws, and is actively engaged in discussions about the future of the repository. This 12-member board of directors has fiduciary and decision-making responsibility. The board will be elected next month, but I can say that the diverse expertise of the nominees includes outstanding leaders with expertise in editing, publishing, intellectual property, information science, sustainability. So what I'm going to show you next are governance and sustainability plans are proposals that have yet to be ratified, so therefore subject to change. There are two kinds of separate fees here that we have proposed. Fees for depositing data and a membership fee into the consortium. We feel fees need to be attractive, that is to say cost-effective relative to supplementary online materials, and fair, that is fair to all different types of journals. And we understand that this model will certainly evolve, and it's under the control of our consortium. So these fees, deposit fees, are recovered up front to allow free dissemination and to assure preservation of the data. The fees we expect will be predominantly paid by journals, which could then pass these fees on to authors, or they could be subsidized by societies, or they could be rolled into publisher costs and revenue. The membership fees are proposed at $1,000 or less annually and would provide a 10% discount on deposit costs. So here are the payment plans as proposed. There are currently 3 primary plans for deposit fees designed to accommodate the partner journals with very different business models, subscription, open access, etc. You can see that a journal or a publisher or society or a research institute can choose for the first 2 prospective options and have a fixed annual cost. Or they may prefer the third option, in which case they'll be billed retrospectively at a slightly higher rate. The last option is designed for cases where authors wish to archive data associated with an article in a journal that's not affiliated with Dryad. This carries higher costs for us since we don't have the metadata for the journal. Of course, we encourage the authors to budget for data archiving costs like these when they compile their data management plans, as are required now by many funding agencies. We estimate that Dryad needs to recover only 1% to 2% of the total article publishing costs. Assuming the repository has economy of scale, over 10,000 data packages annually. At that cost, fixed costs are low. Marginal costs per deposit are mostly due to human curation and not storage. So we hope the board will soon ratify this plan, and we would expect then to implement these payment plans later this year. But as I said, we don't expect this model to be perfect. We know it will need revision. The board will be required to review the revenue structure at regular intervals, no longer than 3 years. You can stay tuned for more about this on Dryad's blog. And here are some of the open questions. Will the rate of deposits meet expectations? How effective will we be at scaling up to handle the large volume of data from high-volume publishers like PLOS? Will we reach sustainability at 7,000 to 10,000 data deposits per year as anticipated? What's the true potential for growth? And will Dryad's disciplinary scope continue to enlarge? So to learn more, I offered you these links. Please feel free to follow us on our blog or on our Twitter. And for science librarians, let me just add an aside. I invite you to use Dryad yourselves or to work with your life sciences researchers who can deposit data and see for themselves what publishing their data in a repository is all about. So that's it, and thank you very much. Here's some references.